For any of you not familiar, every Tuesday we do a live Q&A session. We are doing this one a little early because it is curriculum night for my kids' school, so I wanted to make sure I can make it to that. So we're doing a lunchtime special Q&A this week instead. I appreciate everyone being able to join. If you're watching in the replay, you can still submit questions in the comments. We'll just get to those next week. Otherwise, if you're watching live, you can throw questions in the comments. If you're not comfortable putting your question out in front of everyone, you can always private message us. If it comes up during the session, we'll get to it. Otherwise, we'll save it for next week, or we can just have a private chat back and forth in there if you'd prefer as well. Understand some of these aspects of health can be very personal, sometimes embarrassing and emotional. So you don't have to air it out in front of everyone if you don't want to. While we wait for everyone to put any other questions they have, I wanted to kind of expand upon the topic of yesterday's post, where part of true body transformation starts with thought transformation. And the reason why this is such a big deal, we see it in everything, not just in personal training and weight loss. The actual concept stood out to me in a plastic surgeon's book, and this was a plastic surgeon from like the 50s or 60s, where he's literally only working on people with either born with deformities or traumatic accidents that caused major disfigurement. And what he noticed was that there was a very high percentage of individuals where he would do the cosmetic treatment on to get that ideal face or to restore them to the previous face pre-accident. But he noticed that the what's the word I'm looking for? The levels of depression, self-worth, self-loathing often stayed the same. And what he found was that the internal dialogue is what didn't change. So even though they had dramatic before and after changes from this cosmetic surgery with facial disfigurements, the internal dialogue didn't change at all. So their quality of life never moved, even with a dramatic change in their outward physical appearance there. And that stood out to me when I read his book, because sometimes you see some of the similar things too, where clients are continuously kind of it's more than self-deprecating humor. It's constant negative self-talk and expecting a positive outcome from it. And that's one of the things where I wanted to get people thinking, because you can't put negativity into something and expect to get a positive return for it. There's just no real relationship exchange that I'm aware of, except maybe some random chemistry coincidences where that can actually happen, where you put something negative and you end up getting a positive reaction out of it. Typically, if you're putting negativity into something, you're going to get a negative response back. Just thinking about how you interact with strangers, or even other animals. If you come with demeaning anger, criticism, like, you're not going to get a good response. So to expect different from yourself just doesn't make sense. So the idea is, as you're creating these transformations for yourself from a physique standpoint, a health standpoint, we're trying to either lose weight, we're trying to reduce body fat, we're working on fixing blood work numbers, whether it be cholesterol, blood pressure, diabetes, bone density, things of that nature. How you're speaking to yourself, what you're telling yourself, has a big impact on it. And I touch on this in my book, Consistent Persistence, where you create the cycle of self-talk, where you tell yourself something, you behave as if that's true, so then you get external feedback on that truth, which then justifies your self-belief. So you continue telling yourself that same negative thing. So the only spot where we can really have a major change on that cycle is in the what are you telling yourself? That has to be changed first for the outward portrayal to be impacted, to then impact people's reactions and responses to us. And then that will give us a more positive feedback loop so we can use that cycle of self talk in a positive way rather than continuing to regenerate that negative loop feedback for ourselves. Because it's really hard to feel good about yourself when you're constantly putting yourself down, and because of that, you're just not able to walk with confidence, with an air of feeling good, with an air of trying to think of other proper words, but essentially being able to believe in yourself. You have to do that first for others to believe in you too. You have to feel good about yourself for others to feel good about you too. Um, how you feel about yourself, it makes a difference as far as just how you're presenting yourself, consciously and subconsciously. So what goes on in here has a huge impact upon everything else from a physical standpoint, simply because you can lose all the body fat in the world, but still feel bad about yourself. And you're still going to get that feedback back, that negative feedback back about yourself from the external world for it. I've seen it a lot of times, both men and women, nothing's really wrong with them externally, but they've got such negative self dialogue with themselves that they can't even carry themselves with an air of self confidence, an air of attractiveness, an air of just positivity. So, what goes on in here has a huge impact into our physical presentation from a body language standpoint, from a behavioral standpoint, in a lot of ways that aren't consciously thought out, but they do happen based upon what's going on in here. So, something to kind of think about as you're going through your day and you kind of start hearing that negative self-talk, that whether it's bitterness, whether it's anger, resentment, anything that's directed at you specifically like that, you take a moment and just think like, would you let someone else speak like that to a friend of yours or to a relative of yours, a child of yours? If the answer is no, then you really shouldn't be speaking that way to yourself, then, should you? I mean, if you wouldn't be willing to let someone speak that way to someone important to you, you shouldn't be speaking that way to yourself. Just a thought to consider. Hope that gives some people some insight. If you do have questions, feel free to throw them in and we'll answer them in the next chat next week. Until then, remember to stay persistent in your consistent pursuit of better health. Have a great week.